have time for one question. I'm sorry.
I'm just curious, what congressional district did you run in and how many votes did you get?
Well, I got 50,000 votes, or just shy of that. It was the 7th congressional district, which is mostly Seattle. We got a little bit in Shoreline, it goes south to Burien, and including Vashon Island. Now, more relevant is that it was only 18%. I was disappointed in that, but Jim McDermott is awfully popular. Obviously, a lot of people told me, you know, I really want to vote for you, but I have to vote for Jim McDermott. So it didn't get a good measure. You know, I was hoping to get more like 40% that people would move the, you know, I could move the priority to that level, and we can't. But that just shows that, you know, the priority needs to be higher. It needs to be so high that people set aside all their other concerns, and legitimate concerns. Jim McDermott had some really important issues. But in my view, global warming tops them all. Because I'm looking ahead, and you know, how do you put a price? You know, we see the economic analysis that says it's, you know, how can we justify spending this money now? The economic return 50 years from now is, you know, we need to take present value of 50 years away. It's zilch. But how do you count lives? You know, what's the value of millions of lives? And, you know, we don't know for sure that's true, but as somebody pointed out, you know, you buy insurance for your house, if it doesn't burn down, you didn't say you threw it away. We need to buy that insurance for, not for ourselves, but for future generations.
Next, I am proud to introduce Mr. Phil Mitchell. He is a social entrepreneur and sustainability activist, and a serial doer of awesome things.
I'm in awe of Bob for going and having 65,000 conversations about global warming. That is, I know it wasn't quite 65,000, but that is quite an achievement and really inspiring. I'm up here because last fall, during what I would call round one of Carbon Washington, I co-led Carbon Washington, and so although I have not been involved in conference planning, Yoram and Patrick asked me to come talk about some of the things that we learned during round one. I'm not sure if everyone realizes that this conference came out of an effort to put a carbon tax on the ballot in 2011, and eventually we decided not to shoot for 2011, and as a side project, put on some of the core folks put on this amazing conference. We've been pretty wonky today. Probably the highlight of that for me was the spontaneous eruption of applause at the mention of decoupling.
I know.
But, I mean, I've learned a ton, and it's really wonderful to see all the interest and great questions and enthusiasm here. But at the end of the day, I think that all of us are asking the question, how can we actually make this happen? Right? What is it going to take to move this from a brilliant intellectual idea to a political reality? And that's a really hard question, and hopefully we learned just a smidgen about that by making some effort towards putting this on the ballot in 2011. First thing I want to just talk briefly through is how we viewed the challenges of doing that. So, as most of you know, what it takes to get it on the ballot these days is about 300,000 signatures. That's with a buffer for signatures that get thrown out, which typically costs campaigns about $500,000. Now, the interesting thing about this is that cost, you can bring that down. The more volunteer signature gatherers you have, the lower your cost, because most of that cost is paying signature gatherers. We believed strongly that we had the opportunity to do a lot more with volunteers and that there would be huge benefits to the campaign for doing that. But we didn't get that far. But what we really care about, what it takes to win. And beyond the $500,000, it takes a lot more money than that. And we know that. The best example of that is Prop 87 in California in 2006, where the oil companies poured about $95 million into that single initiative campaign to defeat a proposed tax on oil producers. In addition, what it takes to win, I won't go through all these. Brilliant framing, a broad-based coalition. Prop 23 is the no on Prop 23 is a great example of that. The most interesting, really, are these last two. As has been mentioned a couple times here today, and I think it's absolutely spot on, the cost issue. Trying to pass a carbon tax, the initial gut reaction of the average voter is, why in God's name would I want to pay more? And so we have to go on the offense about the cost issue, because the costs of not doing carbon pricing so far outweigh the costs of carbon pricing. That's in some ways a hard argument to make, but again, Prop 23, that campaign success story shows that you can, if not win that argument, at least fight it to a draw. So, last August, really, with the final collapse of climate legislation in the Senate, we said, let's give this a shot. We had always, I have to stop and just mention that Yoram Bauman has been carrying this torch of carbon pricing for years, and enthusiastically sharing his enthusiasm for a carbon tax ballot initiative for years. But we always said, let's let the more likely political scenarios play out. Federal legislation, Washington Climate Initiative, etc. Last August, it pretty much played out, right? WCI not looking promising, federal action completely dead. So what did we do? We really did two things. We put up a web page where you could sign up and told everybody we could think of about it. And we started going around to the key allies that we knew that we needed to have on board to have a credible run at this. And here's how far we got. We built a core team, a great team of core volunteers. We developed a list of enough people to collect, we thought, about 70 or 80,000 signatures, which is a decent dent in 300,000. Developed an economist letter signed by 36 esteemed economists around the state. And eventually, we said, all right, we need to set ourselves a deadline, and we set November as making a go, no-go decision about where we would take this initiative. Not a bad start for an initiative process, but we knew that we had started very late because of the constraint we put ourselves on. And